Jackie Chan is known worldwide as the smiling action hero who risked his body for entertainment, the man who turned pain into comedy and danger into art. What most people don't talk about is that while his career was reaching unbelievable heights, his personal life was quietly spiraling. These weren't years of failure on screen. These were years of excess, recklessness, and decisions Jackie himself later admitted he deeply regretted. By the mid-1990s, Jackie Chan had achieved something few international stars ever manage. He was already a legend in Hong Kong cinema, having spent years building his reputation through relentless work, extreme stunts, and total dedication to his craft. Films like Police Story, Drunken Master, and Project A made him untouchable in Asia. But the real shift came when Hollywood finally embraced him. Rumble in the Bronx introduced Jackie to American audiences, and Rush Hour turned him into a global superstar almost overnight. Money, fame, and attention arrived faster than he was prepared to handle. Jackie has openly said that success changed him in ways he didn't recognize at the time. He went from struggling actor to one of the highest paid performers in the world, and with that came a sense of invincibility. He started spending recklessly, buying expensive cars, luxury items, and living without limits. He has admitted that during this period, he treated money as something that would never run out. Fame made him careless, not just financially, but mentally. Alcohol became a regular part of his routine. Jackie later revealed that drinking wasn't occasional or social, it became habitual. He has described days where alcohol was involved before lunch and again afterward, even while working. This wasn't a rumor or tabloid exaggeration. These are admissions from Jackie himself. He acknowledged that this lifestyle affected his discipline, his focus, and his behavior on set. For someone whose career was built on precision and physical control, losing that discipline was dangerous. The darker side of this period wasn't limited to drinking. Jackie admitted that he gambled heavily and lived with a constant sense of arrogance. He believed rules didn't apply to him. He has spoken about driving recklessly and making decisions that could have ended his career or his life. At the time, he didn't see these actions as problems. Success had insulated him from consequences, and the industry around him enabled it. What makes this era especially troubling is that it happened while Jackie's public image was at its cleanest. On screen, he was the lovable hero. Off screen, he was living in a way that conflicted sharply with that image. Fans saw discipline, humility, and positivity. Behind the scenes, Jackie was struggling with ego and excess. The gap between perception and reality kept growing. As his fame grew, so did the pressure. Jackie was carrying entire productions on his shoulders, often serving as actor, stunt coordinator, and creative lead. The workload was massive, and instead of slowing down, he tried to escape through indulgence. This pattern is something he later described as a trap of success. The more famous he became, the harder it was to admit he was losing control. Then came 1999, the year that permanently changed how the public viewed him. Jackie's extramarital affair became public, resulting in the birth of a child outside his marriage. The revelation shocked fans around the world. For the first time, the carefully protected image cracked. Jackie held a press conference and publicly admitted to the affair, describing it as a serious mistake and taking responsibility. The statement was brief, but the damage was lasting. This moment marked the peak of what many consider Jackie Chan's darkest personal period. It wasn't just about scandal. It was about accountability. Jackie later acknowledged that his behavior during those years was selfish and destructive, especially toward his family. He has spoken about how success made him emotionally distant and careless with the people closest to him. Professionally, his career continued. Films were still being made. Box office numbers remained strong. But internally, Jackie has said this period forced him to confront who he had become. The stunts hadn't broken him. The fame almost did. These years are rarely discussed because they don't fit the legend. They complicate the story. Jackie Chan wasn't just a fearless hero battling villains on screen. He was a flawed human being struggling with excess, ego, and consequences at the height of his power. Understanding this period doesn't diminish his achievements. It explains the cost of them. This is only the beginning of that story. In the next part, we'll look at how these choices followed Jackie into the next phase of his life, how public opinion began to shift, and how the legend was forced to evolve to survive. If you're watching this and want honest, fact-based stories about the people behind the fame, make sure you subscribe now. These stories don't get told unless you support them. Subscribe, stay with us, and don't miss the next part. As Jackie Chan entered the 2000s, the consequences of his earlier lifestyle didn't disappear. They followed him quietly, shaping how he was perceived both inside the industry and by the public. While his movies were still successful, the unconditional admiration he once enjoyed began to soften. The image of the flawless hero had been replaced with something more complicated. Jackie was still respected for his talent, but the man behind the legend was now under closer scrutiny. During this period, Jackie started speaking more openly about regret. He admitted that money had distorted his values and that fame had created emotional distance between him and the people who mattered most. He acknowledged that he had been absent as a husband and irresponsible as a father. These weren't statements made under pressure. They were reflections he shared years later, after the chaos had settled and the damage was already done. One of the most painful outcomes of Jackie's choices was the permanent fracture in his family life. While he publicly accepted responsibility for the 1999 scandal, the consequences extended far beyond headlines. His relationship with his children became a subject of public discussion, especially as media attention continued to revisit the issue over the years. Jackie largely remained silent, choosing not to publicly engage in ongoing personal disputes. That silence itself became part of the controversy, further complicating how audiences viewed him. At the same time, Jackie's attitude toward discipline began to change. He has admitted that the same recklessness that once fueled his ego eventually scared him. Age, injuries, and reflection forced him to slow down. He began reassessing his behavior, not just as a celebrity, but as a person who had narrowly avoided destroying everything he built. The stunts were becoming harder, the recovery longer. The margin for error was shrinking. Professionally, the industry around him was changing as well. Hollywood action heroes were no longer defined by martial arts alone. Audiences were gravitating toward a different kind of realism, and Jackie's traditional style began to feel out of place in big-budget Western cinema. His box office dominance softened, and his roles became more selective. This shift wasn't a fall, but it was a clear signal that his era as an unstoppable global force was evolving. In response, Jackie leaned more into production, mentorship, and controlled projects. He became more protective of his legacy, carefully choosing roles that aligned with the image he wanted to preserve. He also became more vocal about discipline, often warning younger performers about the dangers of fame, excess, and believing your own hype. These warnings carried weight because they were born from experience, not theory. Public reaction to Jackie during this time was mixed. Some fans appreciated his honesty and growth. Others struggled to reconcile the entertainer they loved with the flaws he openly acknowledged. The internet amplified every past mistake, ensuring that nothing faded quietly anymore. Jackie's earlier admissions were frequently resurfaced, keeping his darker years alive in public memory long after he had tried to move forward. What makes this phase of Jackie's life important is not the scandal itself, but the long-term consequences of unchecked success. He didn't lose his career. He didn't disappear. Instead, he carried the weight of his actions while continuing to work, knowing that admiration would never again be unconditional. That realization changed how he approached both fame and responsibility. Jackie has said that if he could go back, he would have handled money differently, valued family more, and understood that success doesn't excuse behavior. These reflections aren't attempts to rewrite history. They are acknowledgments that greatness on screen does not translate to wisdom off screen. His dark years weren't defined by a single mistake, but by a pattern of excess that took time to undo. By the late 2000s, Jackie had entered a quieter but more controlled phase of his life. He was no longer chasing validation or living without limits. The wildness had been replaced with caution, the arrogance with reflection. The damage had already been done, but the lessons were permanent. In the final part, we'll look at how these experiences reshaped Jackie Chan's legacy, how public opinion continues to divide, and whether his honesty about his darkest years ultimately strengthens or weakens how history will remember him. If you want the full story without exaggeration or fake drama, make sure you're subscribed. The final part is where everything comes together. Subscribe now and stay with us for the conclusion. By the time Jackie Chan reached the later stage of his career, the damage from his darker years had already been done, but so had the growth. What separated Jackie from many other stars who self-destructed was not that he avoided consequences, but that he eventually acknowledged them. His legacy was no longer just about box office numbers or stunt reels. It became a story of survival, accountability, and contradiction. Jackie began speaking more deliberately about responsibility, especially when it came to fame and wealth. He openly admitted that early success made him arrogant and careless, and that no one around him stopped him. In interviews, he described how money removed discipline from his life instead of improving it. These reflections weren't framed as excuses, they were warnings. Jackie repeatedly emphasized that talent alone cannot protect someone from their own behavior. This shift in mindset was reflected in how he approached work. Jackie became far more selective with projects, prioritizing control and safety over spectacle. He scaled back the extreme stunts that once defined his image, not because he had lost courage, but because he understood the cost. Years of injuries, surgeries, and accumulated pain forced him to acknowledge limits he once ignored. The body that built the legend could no longer be abused without consequence. At the same time, public opinion around Jackie grew more divided. To some, he remained an untouchable icon whose contributions to cinema were undeniable. To others, his personal failures and later public statements complicated their admiration. Jackie became an example of how fame does not freeze someone in time. It exposes every flaw, every contradiction, and every unpopular opinion. The same global attention that built his career now magnified every misstep. One of the most persistent aspects of his legacy is the tension between his honesty and his silence. Jackie admitted wrongdoing in certain moments, yet avoided addressing others in depth. This created frustration among critics and disappointment among some fans. But it also revealed a reality many celebrities face. Admitting everything publicly doesn't necessarily heal private damage. Jackie chose to protect parts of his life from further spectacle, even when that decision drew criticism. Despite this, his influence on the industry remained massive. Jackie Chan didn't just change action cinema, he changed how physical performance was approached worldwide. Countless actors, stunt performers, and filmmakers credit him as inspiration. His work ethic, creativity, and willingness to innovate left a permanent mark that personal controversy could not erase. Even critics of his character often acknowledge his unmatched contributions to film. In later years, Jackie's focus shifted toward legacy management. He invested in training the next generation, supporting stunt teams, and preserving the craft he helped globalize. He understood that public memory is complex. People remember highlights, scandals, and soundbites, but history remembers impact. Jackie's impact was already locked in, regardless of how opinions evolved. What makes Jackie Chan's dark years important is not the shock value, it's the lesson. His story shows that success does not equal stability, fame does not equal wisdom, and talent does not prevent self-destruction. Jackie's mistakes didn't happen in obscurity, they happened at the peak of global admiration. That contrast is what makes them uncomfortable to talk about and why they're often ignored. In the end, Jackie Chan didn't fall from grace. He fractured it. And instead of disappearing, he continued forward carrying those fractures openly, even when it hurt his image. That honesty, however imperfect, is part of why his story still matters. He is neither a cautionary tale nor a redemption fantasy. He is proof that legends are human and humans are complicated. Jackie Chan will always be remembered for the stunts, the films, and the laughter. But understanding his darker years adds depth to that memory. It reminds us that behind the smile was a man who struggled, failed, learned, and lived with the consequences. That doesn't erase the legend, it explains it. If you value real stories told without exaggeration, fake drama, or made-up narratives, this channel is for you. These videos take time, research, and honesty to create. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Hit subscribe now, support the work, and stay tuned for more stories that go beyond the surface.